The older woman had never had children, so she initially felt it was all a fabrication of her imagination. But as the knocking continued and the voice addressed her as Mom again, she knew it wasn't all in her head. When Julie and Samuel Spencer weren't blessed with their own children, the couple decided they were enough for each other and immersed themselves in work to cope with their grief of being childless. However, after 56 years of happily married life, Julie regretted not considering adoption when Samuel left for his heavenly abode. Samuel's death made her miserable, and she gradually closed herself off from everything. She sold her house and returned to her hometown, Tennessee, where her parents had left her a house after they died. It hadn't seen a single visitor in years since Julie's parents died, and his old design and spooky aspects were enough to scare anyone. After Julie relocated, she refused to interact with her neighbors and never made any friends. Her neighbors dreaded her, and there were tales that she was a witch who preyed on children, that she was mad or worse, a recluse. But one day, everything changed. 3 years after she relocated, Julie was startled awake by a loud knock on her door. "Mom, please open the door." A voice accompanied it. Julie opened her eyes with a heavy gulp. Good Lord, who is that, she pondered, sitting on her bed? There was soon complete silence, and Julie sighed, confident that it was all in her head and that she was hallucinating. 2 days ago, a new couple had moved next door. The couple had 3 lovely triplets, and the family appeared to be quite happy. Julie was watching them from her kitchen window as they moved in, regretting and feeling jealous that she had never urged Samuel to consider adopting children. "Perhaps I wouldn't be here today if I wasn't alone. I'd have my children and even grandchildren," she told herself desperately as Julia reflected on her lonely life. She buried her face in her hands, believing she was hearing voices because she was feeling horrible about being childless. "Oh, I'm just making things up. This old age is finally catching up with me," she grumbled. But then there was another knock, and another. "Please, Mom," the voice repeated. "Please open the door." Julie felt a shudder run down her spine as she heard the voice again. Is someone really at the door? She pondered as she walked carefully to the front door, the knocks continuing. When she finally opened the door, she was greeted by a gorgeous young man in her doorway. "Jesus Christ," he said, eyes wide open. "It's you, Mom. It's Mother's Day, and I found you." Julie had never been more confused in her entire life. How could she be his mother when she and her husband never had children? "Who are you?" she stammered. "I believe you've arrived at the wrong house. I don't have any kids." The man was confused. "What are you even saying? I know it's you. I'm not going to let you abandon me this time. I'm Eric." "Your son?" Julie glared at him. "Hey boy, does this sound like a joke to you? You must stop doing this. This is pretty insulting to someone like me who has never had children." "But I'm not kidding. I can prove it to you." "Look," he said, pulling a photograph from his backpack and showing it to her. "I was 5 years old when you abandoned me in an orphanage," he said. "My father had apparently abandoned you, and you couldn't afford to raise me alone, so you left me there because you wanted me to have a better life. I've already forgiven you, Mom. I know you did it for my sake, but please put the past behind us. It took me years to track you down. I had to pull a few strings at the orphanage to get this address. They wouldn't tell me anything, but it turns out you left this address. When you left me there, I showed this image to your neighbors when I was coming here, and they said you moved in here 3 years ago." Julia's eyes welled up as she glanced at the photograph, which depicted a younger version of her with a younger Eric at a beach. She wiped her tears and said, "Look, Eric, I see why you think I'm your mother, but I'm not this woman. You are not my son." Eric. Smile faded, and he was taken aback. What exactly do you mean? Please come in first. There's a lot you need to know." As they settled inside, Julia revealed that Eric was actually her long-lost twin sister Rosie's son. She told him that Rosie was 16 when she eloped with her lover. Their parents were opposed to their relationship, so the teenagers just left home and never contacted any of them. "We searched everywhere," Julie explained. "My parents gave up after a while, but I was still determined to find her. My late husband and I kept looking for her for years." And she hesitated. "And then what?" Eric looked at her hopefully. One morning we received a phone call from my husband Samuel's friend. He was a cop who was assisting us with Rosie's case. He informed us that she had died in a homeless shelter. Your mother passed away. Eric. She's no more. Eric was distraught and couldn't believe his mother had died. That has to be a lie. Oh, God, that's terrible, he moaned, covering his face with his palms. In a way, Eric, Julie explained, your mother did the best she could for you. She didn't want you to accompany her on the streets. But I had no idea she had a child. I would have adopted you if she had told me she had a child. My husband and I. You see, we never had any kids. So if you ever need a mother by your side, I'm always here. Okay, she told him to cheer him up. Eric sighed. Well, that's extremely kind of you, Mrs. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to ask your name. He said, embarrassed. What's your name, Julie Grind? How about just calling me Mom, but keep in mind that I'm strict and a little high maintenance, since I want my son to spend time with me. I don't have a better option for now. Eric smiled slightly. Well, I guess I don't have a choice either. Thank you for being so thoughtful. Mom. Can I please give you a hug? I really miss my mom. Oh, of course you can. Come here. Julie's eyes welled up as Eric hugged her. You can call me Mrs. Spencer if you don't want to call me Mom. Eric, there's no compulsion. I would be equally happy to be your aunt, she remarked as she patted his back, but Eric refused. Nah, I think Mom suits you way better, he said. Let's just keep it that way. From that day on, Julie's life changed for the better. Eric was a blessing in disguise who turned her life around. She was never alone again and began mixing with the people around her. Her neighbors eventually learned her story of why she was constantly alone, and they felt terrible for passing judgment on her. Soon, Eric persuaded Julie to move in with him, so she sold her parents' house and relocated. A few years later, Eric married, and Julie became a devoted grandma to a beautiful baby girl they named Rosie. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, subscribe the channel and press the bell icon.